From William Shakespeare to Emily Dickinson to modern day poets, poetry is something that has been hotly debated, is something that is discussed frequently, and can be timeless. It can affect anyone, touch anyone, and even influence heads of state. But if you look on Google, the top question about poetry that I was able to find was, is poetry dead? Is it? That's my question for you. Is poetry dead? Go ahead and type in the comments below and let me know what you think. I don't think it's dead. In fact, I think that poetry is a thriving writing community and publishing community even. And if you look at the website npr.org, they say that in the last decade, the amount of adults that read poetry has almost doubled. What I see is a trend that's still moving upward. So if you clicked on my video because you want to learn how to write poetry, then you have just jumped on the bandwagon at the right time, because the popularity is still increasing. Hi, I'm Kammi with Flash University, and today I'm going to bring you my 6 steps. This is sign language. Old habits die hard. My 6 steps for writing quality poetry. Remember, it's really important that when we put pencil to paper and then we get ready to publish and then we publish it and we put it out to the world, before we reach that point, we have to make sure that it's quality. We have to make sure that we are feeding into the increasing popularity of poetry. So in order to do that, you have to know the basics, right? So there are different types of poetry. And if you get on the, Masterclass, that's what it's called. If you get on Masterclass, they actually talk about 15 different types of poetry, and that's the most comprehensive list that I've found on the internet. I would say that it is not comprehensive though. I believe that there are more types. I know there are more types because I write types that weren't included in the list unless they believe they fall as a subcategory of a different type. I don't. So I don't believe that. So there are at least 15, maybe closer to 20 different types of poetry. Wow, that's overwhelming. Hold on. Don't get overwhelmed. So step number 1 is just start. Just start. Some people, they start with an idea or a feeling or a thought, and they just start writing, and they let the form, the story tell the form. They let the story decide what the form should be, and then they edit it later to fit. Some people start with the form, and they just sort of change the story and adapt it until it fits the form. So it kind of depends on who you are and where you are. But there are drastically different styles of poetry. So tip number 2 is to know your style, your topic, the type of poetry you want to write. There's everything from very, very small poetry like limerick and haiku to large poetry like epic. There's narrative poetry that tells a story. There's ballad that tells a story as well. There's strict poetry. Haiku is very strict. Ooh. Shout out to anybody that knows what I'm talking about. But haiku has to have specific. Hold on, I'll give it to you in a second. And if you can figure out where it's from, you get a gold star. Type it in the comments below. But haiku has a certain amount of syllables. Strict, strict, strict. So, hashtag I love Sokka, hashtag Team Boomerang. If anybody can tell me where that's from and who messed up the haiku, you will get a gold star. I will find you a virtual gold star for that one. Haiku is very strict. And then on the other end of that, you have flexible poetry, like free verse. So it's really important to understand there's everything from epic and large and strict to very loose or very small poetry. And so it's really important to just kind of feel out where you are on that spectrum before you start really producing stuff. Because, maybe you're somebody that can write something small and large. Maybe you're somebody that really only wants haiku. And that's okay. But the more you try the different types, the more you'll know what works for you. And honestly, some people get surprised by what they end up liking in the end. So go ahead and just jump in, just dive in and try the different types. Now, so tip number 1 was to just start. Tip number 2 is to know the style of poem that you want to write. Okay? So tip number 3 is to know what topic you want. Now, topics can be anything from taboo to personally emotional and personally expressive to talking about social issues to just telling a story. Two roads diverge in the wood is not about anything traumatic or big, but it is timeless. Anyway, let me know why you think Robert Frost is timeless. So, tip number, where am I at? Am I at 3? Tip number 4. I'm on 4, guys. Tip number 4 is to use specific types of words. So you're going to want words in specific types of categories based on what you're trying to do. If you are trying to write a poem that really hits somebody emotionally or hits hard on a social issue, you're going to want to choose very short, very strong, very punctuated words for your poem. If you want to tell a story, if you want someone to really be able to envision what you're talking about, then you're going to want vivid imagery. So, to teach you what vivid imagery is, go ahead and close your eyes and picture your favorite dessert. A donut. We had a donut this week and it was amazing. So picture your favorite kind of treat. Now, as you go to take a bite of that treat, imagine that in your mouth squirts a ripe, sour lemon. Did your mouth just water? If it did, then you did it right. So certain words can bring certain images and can actually elicit physical responses. If your mouth is watering, mine's watering, guys, the lemon. If your mouth is watering, then that word had a physical impact on you, right? So words are very powerful. So if you want someone to be able to see that forest, to be able to see those roads diverging, you need to be using words that have a lot of imagery in them, that impact the 5 senses, really, is what it is. Sight. What do you see in that forest? What do you hear in that forest? What do you smell? Do you smell pine? Do you hear the birds tweeting in the trees? What do you, let's see, taste, smell, hear, touch? Do you feel the rough bark under your fingers as you brush past something? Or the weeds and the bushes scratching your legs as you're hiking? What are you feeling? What are you sensing? Those are vivid words, and those will help others recall moments where they've experienced that, and will help them really jump in and dive all in to what you're writing. So then the next one, tip number 5, write without fear and edit without mercy. That is a common expression in the writing community, and it is a fantastic expression. Okay, you get your inner critic, out of your head, because it's not going to help you at all with the writing process. You need to know that your story matters, even if Even if you think, oh, it doesn't matter to anybody else, who cares? It matters to you enough that you clicked on my video, that you're looking into writing a poem, right? So it matters. So get your inner critic out of your head. Boop, bye. And just love the story you're writing. Just write it. Just give all your emotion to it. Now, a trick that psychologists use for this is bypassing their processing, their thinking brain by using their non-dominant hand. So because I'm a right-hand writer, if I write with my left hand, that inner critic is gone. Why? Because my brain is too focused on the task of writing to be able to criticize what I'm writing. There are lots of other tricks and tips that you can do to help with that, but just know it's really important to write without criticism. Just tell your story and then set it aside. Give yourself a day, 2 days, a week, and then come back to it with your critic hat on. And you look at the form, you look at the word choice, you look at how you emotionally respond. After you've had a break, what happens is your brain comes back to it with a fresh start. It's like fresh eyes, I think is the expression. You come back to it with fresh eyes, and then you're able to almost read it as if you're reading it for the first time. So you're going to have a similar response to your writing as somebody who is reading it for the first time. If you take a long enough break, it just kind of allows for that separation. So anything that isn't fitting, anything that doesn't quite have the imagery or the impact that you want, tweak it, change it, find a thesaurus, make sure it's fitting the form of the poem that you are trying to write. Now, the next tip is critique partners and beta readers. Now, this is one that's easy to skip, especially if you're writing about something that is personal or emotional or taboo. Ooh, taboo's hard for me, guys. Shout me out in the comments below if you've ever written something that was taboo or that felt like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get blowback from writing this, right? It's really hard to share that with other people. You put everything that you have into it and then taking that feedback. Now, pro tip, when you get feedback, if it is hard feedback, don't dismiss it, don't accept it, leave it. Walk away, leave it. Give it a couple days, give it a week, then come back to the feedback and relook at it again with fresh eyes. It's very important. And look at your poem and look at what you've written and see, is it right? Is this person right? Or do they have a different idea of where I'm going with this, right? Than I do, right? So it's really important. Just, it's okay if you get harsh feedback. And if you get feedback that doesn't work, that's okay too. You don't have to take anything you don't want to take. So don't. It's your piece of work. Okay, but critique partners are essential for quality. They're going to catch things that even with fresh eyes, you're not going to catch. You're going to skip spelling mistakes. You're going to skip grammar mistakes. You're going to miscount syllables, or you think that slant rhyme works, but it doesn't. There are things you will miss. And a critique partner or a beta reader is just somebody that you give it to, that you trust, that knows about poetry, that will read your work for you and give you feedback. Critique partner, really the difference is you exchange work with them. You read theirs, they read yours. I recommend 2 to 3 critique partners. And if you're not sure where to get those from, if you're in school, check with somebody in your class. If you're not, Facebook groups are fantastic for finding beta readers. There's groups that are solely dedicated to beta readers. There are groups for poetry writers. There's groups for fantasy writers. There's groups for memoir writers. There's groups for everything. So find a Facebook group. If you don't find one, make one. That's a great opportunity to network with people. So send it out to 2, maybe 3 critique partners or beta readers, get it back, edit it, and then give yourself another break, look at it again, and if it's ready, then you can submit it to be published. So, is poetry dead? I really want to hear from you. Do you think it's dead? Do you think it's still alive and kicking? I love the classics personally, and I am excited to dive into poetry in this series. So check back with me. I will have videos on different types of poetry, on how to submit poetry, magazines that are great to submit to, anything really, editing poetry, anything you want to see, you let me know. But this is going to be a whole series on writing poetry. So check out my channel, subscribe, hit like, check back in with me for future videos. Thanks, guys.